everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Com 498 show. I'm Dr. Tony Palmieri from the Communication Studies program at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. And I'm joined today by someone who I really admire so much, former student of mine, and he's been on a journey his entire life. It started in Knoxville, Tennessee, and somehow got all the way to Oshkosh, and now he's living in Savannah, Georgia. And his name is Michael Taylor. Michael, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm always feel very blessed coming back to UW Oshkosh. It's the greatest program in the country. I truly believe that.
Well, thank you so much. And I so much appreciate you, as will become clear in this conversation. I mentioned you're from Knoxville, Tennessee, and you grew up there, obviously, and you went to the U.S. military, I think in 2011, right?
Yeah, so I went into the military about 2011, straight after high school. And growing up, I came from a very, very poor family, single mom, two little brothers, no dad at all. It was just us surviving. And I actually had a discussion with this the other day, being a musician in my background as well. I used to play shows just to get tips to go buy food out of the gas station. That's how poor I was. Yeah.
Wow, goodness. So when you went to the military in 2011, right after high school, was it a way out of poverty for you? Is that how you saw it at the time?
It was. I remember when I was in high school, I got a job immediately, and I still wanted to have that high school life. I played football, wasn't good at football at all, but I still played it, did the wrestling thing, and I worked a job while I was in high school trying to help my mom keep the lights on. We did use food stamps, but it helped a little bit, but for three kids, it's a lot.
Right.
So I did what I could. And then when I turned 18, I grew up a punk rocker, believe it or not. I know a lot of people are like, you're a military background and you were a musician.
Right.
So I was kind of getting in trouble, doing the typical 18-year-old kid stuff. I mean, we all remember those days of just getting in trouble. So I knew when I turned 18, my mom gave me four choices. She said, son, you're either going to go to college, the military, trade school, or you're going to end up getting in trouble with your friends and ended up in jail. So I really took that to heart. And that's why I talk to a lot of young high school kids. I'm like, hey, these are your four options.
Mhm.
If you can become an entrepreneur, great. If you can go into like investing at a young age, even better. But I highly recommend the trades and military while you're young because it sets you up for success academically and in life.
Mm. So you went to the military and you went to Afghanistan, correct?
I did. So
What was
when
your major role in the military in Afghanistan?
Sure. So I went to Afghanistan back in 2013, which is over 10 years ago. I can't believe that. So I deployed when I was 21, 22, somewhere in that young age, and I was part of a convoy security team. I had one mission, and it was to keep the engineers safe, looking for IEDs, any type of road pipe bombs on the side of the roads. And then I got sent to become a chaplain assistant, which I'm not MOS qualified for the military that are listening to this. But I was voluntold by first sergeant I was going to be a bodyguard. So I was a bodyguard to a minister, and we used to go to all these combat outposts, and we were getting shot at. I had to push them on the ground and return fire just to keep them safe. And we're going to the front lines, meeting with the infantry, special forces. I met with them a few times, Task Force Copperhead, which they're long gone now. But I worked with them a little bit, and it was mostly like making sure they had toothbrushes, toothpaste, and just simple stuff. For about 3 months, we didn't have food. We only had MREs because of how bad the area was that we were in. So
Wow.
helicopter drops weren't coming. When you're in those red light zones is what I call them. It's usually when you turn on your military flashlight and it's just a red lens. It's so the Taliban
Hmm.
see you. So we had to do that and just live in total darkness for a while.
Just amazing. So you did your service in Afghanistan, and just to kind of jump up a little bit, when you got back to the States, you became part of the Tennessee Army National Guard, right?
I did. I
And
went.
and and one thing, and you and I have talked about this, you did search and rescue during the Great Smoky Mountain Fire of 2016. where you helped evacuate thousands of people. Can you tell us what were the Great Smoky Mountain Fires in 2016, and what was your role in that?
So I remember it was finals week for my associate degree. And so I get this call in the middle of the night from my sergeant. He goes, Taylor, we need you to get on a Humvee and we need you to go up to Gatlinburg. And I said, well, what's going on? I'm sitting there studying geology and learning about rocks and all that crazy stuff. So I'm sitting there studying my geology book, kind of shaving in the car, getting my uniform set up. And I asked my sergeant, I said, how long are we going to be up in Gatlinburg? And he goes, oh, a few hours. It's just a small fire. And next thing I know, it became this whole catastrophic fire that is actually one of the worst in Tennessee's history. So I jumped in my Humvee. Well, I jumped in my personal vehicle, my personally owned vehicle, drove to the National Guard base, and we immediately just started getting into Humvees. And I remember this younger kid, straight out of basic training, very young and kind of just not knowing what combat's like or what high stress is like. So I grabbed this young kid. We're in the Humvee together. And we're driving straight into Gatlinburg, and as soon as we got there, the sign was burnt down, and there was like a 200-foot wall of fire just moving down the mountain towards us. And he was scared. I was scared too. Because I didn't think this would ever happen in my hometown. And so next thing I know, we're on patrol. Kicking in doors. We weren't really allowed to like bust the doors unless we heard voices inside, but it was a mandatory evacuation. So we kept yelling, Tennessee National Guard, military police, this is an emergency evacuation. We need you out now. So we cleared about 4,000 homes, escorting over thousands of people. We had to get them out of there. And I just remember how bad the fire was. It really messed with me psychologically for a while, just because you could hear all the animals screaming in the woods. I think that was the most difficult
Wow.
thing in my military career because animals were so pure. I have a cat. She's my therapy cat from the VA. I can take her anywhere with me technically, so it's kind of awesome. But yeah, I'll never forget that. We were going over to this one house and you just see this huge wall of fire coming down. And there was down electrical wires. And at the time, I was an electrician, so I knew the dangers of electricity. And while I was in the guard, I was moving around a little bit, kind of being a drifter, I guess, after Afghanistan. And then I came across those wires and it was very dangerous. And I just remember in the middle of the night while we're doing this search and rescue process, you'd hear explosions from containers and houses, like the
Oh,
gas and everything just blowing up. So, people like myself and other soldiers that fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, they were having PTSD like crazy. They thought we were getting shot at.
oh.
So,
Michael, you are such a warrior in the most
yeah.
positive way of thinking about that. That I just have to say, one thing I always loved about having you in class is, as you know, in American education, because of our refusal to do anything about violence, every classroom in America is always under threat of some tragedy.
Mhm.
And I go into my classrooms and I think, who in the room right now, if God forbid there was a tragedy, who is going to step up? And I used to always think Michael Taylor is going to be the first guy to step up.
I appreciate that. I mean,
Well, again, you have that warrior ethic in the most positive way one can think of that term, where everything about you is service toward others. Did your military service give you that ethic? Was it your mom growing up? Like, how did you develop that ethic?
so growing up, not many people know this, but I talk about it a lot, especially in therapy sessions. I grew up in a very, very rough home.
Yeah.
My father was in and out of jail. We were broke. And so after living in a situation that I was forced in, and my mom did everything she could, she's an amazing lady, nothing against her whatsoever. But when you have nothing and you grow up with nothing and you learn to like remember that for the rest of your life, no matter how successful you are, no matter what you do in life, when you come from nothing, it sticks with you. And you
Yeah.
see these people that have less than or more than and you're just like, I need to fight for them. After seeing the stuff that I saw, not just in the military, but in childhood, it made me want to be more of a wholesome person. and it made me want to help others that really need it, just because nobody was there to really help me. And growing
Wow.
up, single parent home and all that, I was like, I didn't have help. It was just good luck, kid. And I'll never forget that feeling of just like feeling hopeless. Like you're so hopeless when you're a kid. Like I remember my younger brother, he was an infant. And I remember we were so broke. We didn't have anything to give him for Christmas. So I remember wrapping up my old action figures, when I'm a kid, and I gave it to my little brother thinking Santa dropped them off. And I'll never forget that same Christmas, we had a drunk driver was flying towards me, and I was in the front seat, and I was in third grade. And this car just exploded and it flipped over our vehicle. And I looked at my mom and I was like, we got our lives for Christmas. I mean, I can't,
Oh man.
grateful. So from that situation forward, I wanted to help others that were in the same situation that I was in. And people that have never been in those situations, I want to make sure that they never, ever go through that.
That's so inspiring, Michael, because you could have easily pulled an opposite lesson from all that, right? And you became a servant leader. And I just find that like so inspiring. So, the big question is, how then did you get from Tennessee to Oshkosh? What finally led you to Oshkosh?
So interesting story. So when I left the military, I was playing in a lot of punk rock bands, and I was actually living up in Seattle at the time where I was stationed, and I met this man named Ross Allison, who was a celebrity ghost hunter. And ghost hunting is what actually led me to Oshkosh. So 2017, I was playing in a punk rock band. We are doing shows, and Ross calls me because he remembers me being a ghost hunter up in Seattle outside of the military. He calls me and he goes, "Hey, I want to use you for a film. Wesley Yure's involved in it." And I'm like, "Wesley Yure, who's that?" And so I didn't know who that was, but it was a famous actor who created Dragon Tales, and he was on Land of the Lost. He played Will.
Oh,
So Wesley Yure recruited me, and I got on a meeting phone with him. I'm like, "You're the guy that created Dragon Tales, Land from the Lost." Like I had no idea who he was, but he was a big shot in the '80s. And so I got with Ross, I got with him, and we developed a team of ghost hunters. And we had a camera crew come in from California to film it. Well, we decided to pick up David Weatherly, who's also a notorious figure. He does a lot of like ancient alien research and stuff like that. So I was like, awesome. I'm around all these paranormal nerds. I'm right at home. This is going to be great. So we stopped by and we were doing all these haunted road trips across America. So we drove from Nashville all the way up to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and down in New Orleans. And I'll never forget when I was filming, and we had a contract to Netflix at the time, and we just started filming this ghost hunting documentary. And we were actually ghost hunting for Jeffrey Dahmer, and we were doing stuff to see if you can actually be physically touched by poltergeist or entities, of energy or whatever. And we had the scientist actually who worked for NASA
wow.
got involved with it. And I just got put in that situation where I'm like, man, it was just surreal. There was times I'm like, is this really happening? Like, but we started ghost hunting at this place called Shaker Cigar Bar in Milwaukee. And what brought me back there was really just the fascination of the paranormal in Wisconsin. Uh, Met a lady, of course, it didn't work out, which was a great thing. To people listening out there with broken hearts, you'll get through it. Just focus on you. Use that energy to be a better person, to
Yeah.
grow as an individual. So met this girl. We moved up. I met her when I was filming in Milwaukee, and we just started being friends. It was just straight up friends at first,
Mhm.
for about a year or two, and then we started dating. And I went up to Milwaukee, and I drive back down to Knoxville for work the next day. So it's
Wow.
it's, it's a long drive. It's like 18 hours, in the car, depending on if it's a good day or not. So I kept going up to Milwaukee to spend time with this girl I was dating. Went back to Knoxville, and I was doing construction at the time, doing electrical work. I worked on fire alarm panels, those annunciators, and hooking up strobe lights and elevators and
Hmm.
hospitals and commercial buildings. So when I came up to Milwaukee, she's like, "I live in Oshkosh," and she graduated from Oshkosh. I'm not going to say her name just out of respect for that, but I fell in love with Oshkosh when I went up this year. I'm like, this town is amazing. It's small, it's simple. People are so kind here. And I'm like, I'm just going to move up to Oshkosh. I've never lived in Wisconsin, and I've always wanted to live in the Midwest. I just never really had the chance because I'm fascinated by snow. So down here in Savannah, we got snow this year, believe it or not. It was very, very
Yeah.
weird because we never.
So, so you enrolled at UW Oshkosh, And was communication studies your first major?
So my first major was business, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew I had the GI Bill, and I'm going to use that thing up. So it's business at first, and then I was kind of like, I'm just not. It just wasn't for me. I took supply chain and demand courses. They were great. I took microeconomics. I took some economic and math classes. Turns out I'm horrible at math. So I was like, I don't know. This is not for me. And then I started taking more and more communication courses, actually through you, Dr. Palmieri. And I was like, this is right where I need to be. This is such a great program. And see, a lot of people always downplay communication degrees or anthropology degrees. And I love to remind people those are so valuable in the workplace. And as soon as I started to kind of go into the intro to rhetoric and more about symbolism, about we're talking about your ethos and the different languages
Right.
that you teach.
Well,
It's
I can speak for all of my colleagues. We loved having you in class. Michael
appreciate it.
Taylor was always in the front row, always prepared. We get those points where people get silent, not you,
Nope.
Michael. You were always, it was phenomenal, always ready to participate, always ready to add something of value. I mean, you made the classes so much more enjoyable for everyone. And it sounds like would you say you had a really good experience in communication studies?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Without having gone through those communication courses, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I mean, I just interviewed with the FBI recently. And they're wanting me to be an FBI agent. And I've been talking to them, and it was all because I learned how to read, I learned how to write, I learned how to do all these very beneficial things to where the bureau's hitting me up and they're going, hey, we're looking at hiring new recruits for the bureau. And also the Georgia Bureau of Investigators have also hit me up to be a homicide detective just because of how
Wow.
communications is so valuable. I mean, you can take it into, they prefer actually, a lot of agents prefer you to have a different background than criminal justice because crimes are changing, things are revolving more and more due to AI and all this stuff.
Mhm.
And communications really taught you how to look for those things, those symbols.
When you did graduate, was that 22 or 23? Do you remember?
I think it was 23. Yeah, it was 20.
Okay, I think so too. Okay.
Yeah.
So you graduate in 23, and not too long after that, you get to Savannah, Georgia. And is it true the first thing you were doing is you were doing like ghost hunting tours, right?
Yeah, it was actually. So I still kind of run the ghost tour stuff every now and then. I haven't
Okay.
been doing it as much because Savannah has 50 ghost hunting tours. 50. It is a extremely competitive market down here. I was actually working on a catacombs tour, which I actually had to go to the town meeting, talk to the mayor, and that wasn't going to happen because not a lot of people know that there's catacombs underneath Savannah, and it was during the yellow fever epidemic. So a lot
Wow.
of fever, the graves, the cemeteries were just too full of deceased people. They started to use this underground tunnel networks where they would bury the dead, kind of like Paris with the catacombs up there, but they're just caskets underground everywhere in these tunnels.
And
So,
by the way, I need to remind people that some people hear ghost hunting, they think this is a joke. You take this very, very seriously.
yeah, absolutely. The paranormal it's a new science.
Yeah.
I always tell people you learn biology, you learn about rocks, you learn about geology, stars, and parapsychology because it's a new science that's being more and more examined now due to technology changing, due to how communications, like in the class, is changing.
Hmm.
So when you start to look for the scientific aspects, like personally, I'm an electrician, I'm also a veteran, so I know what to look for, what's real and fake. So, and a lot of kids out there nowadays, they're making these YouTube channels and you can tell they're staging things and you can tell they're using, AI stuff to pop up and scare you just to get followers. But when you really dig down to it, hauntings have happened since the beginning of time. I could go to China tomorrow or I could go to Egypt tomorrow and everybody around the world has one thing in common, and that's a ghost story.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think that's definitely true. So you were doing the tours,
Mhm.
and then at some point you decided you wanted to go on for more education, and you enrolled at Savannah State University for a master's in public administration. So tell us about that. What went into your making a decision to go on for an MPA?
So I was growing up, honestly, it was motivation. I was told by all my professors in high school that I was not college material. They go, Mike, you should go get a trade. This is not for you. You're gonna be broke like us growing up. And I'm like, broke like you? Like what? So, and I went to a Catholic school because I was kind of a troublemaker when I was younger, just because of how broken my home was. I acted out. So my mom
Hmm.
put myself and my brothers in Catholic school. So I was around a lot of these Catholic kids that had a lot of money, and we were there on scholarship by the state of Tennessee due to poverty. So I'd see these kids driving like BMWs, Hummers to school, and that was a thing. And I'm looking at them like, what? And so, I felt left out. I was very jealous. And so after hearing the teacher say, "Oh, you're not college material, you just drop out of school, just, go get in trouble or whatever," they just gave up on me technically. So, but the most important thing, I didn't give up on myself. And I wanted to prove people wrong by pushing through academics. Growing up, I was dyslexic. 70% of populations of inmates in prison today in America alone, 70% of the inmates are dyslexic, 70%.
Wow.
So, and that's where my life was heading. I knew I was going to get in trouble. But because of all the things that happened in my life, I was like, I need to get my doctorate's degree. I want to prove everybody, the inner punk rocker in me wanted to prove everybody that I could do it. So I was raging against the teachers, and I just fell in love with academics, especially with having the GI Bill. I mean, that helps. They're paying for your school, your housing,
Hmm.
books. That's why I meet a lot of these young kids that you can tell they're not mature enough yet for college, and that's okay. I dropped out
Hmm.
3 times, and first one was over a girl, something dumb, young 18-year-old kid stuff.
Sure.
Two was partying too much, and then I joined the army, and then I tried to take college classes in Afghanistan, and we got bombed really bad, so we lost internet for like 6 months. So I just
Oh,
got out of school because the DoD
man.
gave me. Uh, but I just kept wanting to pursue education just because I wanted a better life for myself and someday have kids of my own and tell them, you're going to be just fine. I'm going to try to be the father that I never had and try to show what hard work is to whenever I decide to have kids and stuff. So that was also a motivator. Um,
So your plan is, I think you have one semester left in your MPA program,
I do. I have 2 classes. I have information systems and I have the capstone course.
right? And this is at Savannah State University.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Now you were telling me before we started recording, Savannah State University is um, many students of color. Is that right?
Yeah. So I personally chose Savannah State because I wanted to interpersonal communication. I think Dr. Ulrich would be proud of me saying this. I wanted to look and use the lens through somebody else's eyes. So I wanted to go to a historically Black university. And that's where I'm at now. I'm the only white kid in almost all of my classes, and I absolutely love it because it's giving me a new perspective of how people from, because I have students in there from Haiti, Ghana, all these African countries. And it's absolutely amazing talking to them about their families. How are they doing? Some of them have green cards for school and work, and
Hmm.
they're absolutely terrified of this current administration. And they're coming to me asking me questions. And I'm just trying to help the students out. I helped out a girl from Bangladesh recently because she's Muslim, but there's not a lot of mosques in Savannah. So I'm trying to help her, get to whatever religious things she needs. That's been a challenge because we're in the Bible Belt down here. It's
Yeah, absolutely.
kind of rough.
What an incredible story. And so when you do get your MPA, you're then planning to go on for a doctorate degree also?
I am. I'm probably going to take a break for just a little bit because I need to get some work experience. But my end goal is to retire from the government. I know right now the government's crazy. I'm hoping it'll get better someday. I'm trying to be
Yeah,
optimistic because you can mope and complain about it all day, but it doesn't do anything. Actions or, is through
right.
communication. Actions the answer. You got to act and you got to vote and you got to go out and make statements to the media and work with nonprofit organizations or for profit, whichever. Um,
Right.
make us dance. But my end goal is to be a professor at prisons, so I can go and help these inmates study and learn how to read and learn how to do that. I don't know if you knew this or not, but how I learned to read, even though I struggled through high school, I was a D student. I started to use sound, so I'd use a snare drum for S's, and I'd use the other symbol for different vowels. So because I play a little bit of drums, I'm not that great at it. I was always a guitar player and bassist, but I started using music and I used those rhythms to learn how to read. So that's what taught me.
That's incredible. Hey, I want to go back to your Knoxville upbringing for a second. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, as you know, and there's an old saying, you can take the boy out of Brooklyn, but you can't take the Brooklyn out of the boy.
Yeah.
Is the same thing true with Knoxville? You can take the boy out of Knoxville, but you can't take the Knoxville out of the boy. Like, how has Knoxville remained a part of your whole being?
Sure. So Knoxville, it was rough for me. I think that's what kind of made me a fighter, was Knoxville, just because I felt so excluded from a lot of people. So I grew up down the street from a bunch of punk rockers and metalheads and all that stuff, and I'd just go to shows constantly. I'd be seeing all these metal shows. I'd ended up meeting celebrities. I've met Johnny Knoxville like 4 times through these dudes, and so I think being Tennessee, there's a lot of pride. The volunteer state, because we had the most soldiers volunteer for the Civil War.
Oh, that's right.
So we are a volunteer state because they fought in the Confederate Army. And that's kind of why I've always enjoyed growing up in Knoxville, because I've always been in the ghost hunting and music. So I have both. I have haunted battlefields, and then there's Elvis Presley, so um, but I'd say Knoxville is a very unique place, and everyone needs to go visit it. Dolly Parton, she's the face of Tennessee. So we're very grateful for
Oh,
her.
that's right. That's right. And you must be a Dolly Parton fan, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. If I said anything different, I think I'd have a bunch of hate emails being sent to me. So, but she's so,
The next time I teach the rhetoric of rock music, I think I'm going to spend a little bit more time on Dolly Parton. It's only been in the last few years that I've come to know how prolific she has been,
mhm.
right?
Oh,
I didn't realize until recently just how many records she has recorded since the
Mhm.
I guess, 60s.
She recently released a rock and roll album where she's,
Right, exactly.
and that,
And
yeah.
she's a very dedicated activist and just really an American treasure.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean,
if you think about it. By the way,
local.
Michael, as we've been talking, I looked up on at my desk here, and you may not remember this, but I will always value this. I'm sure people can't see it, but you gave me this badge before you left Oshkosh.
I
It's
did.
a
Yep.
UW Oshkosh Army badge, and I've always kept that in my office. It's
Oh,
very,
awesome.
very valuable to me.
No, I appreciate that. I know we had to give out a coin to one professor. Combat vets usually do this to one professor that changed your life, and you were that professor. So I'm
Well,
very
I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that, Michael. And you made such a difference while you were here. And like I said, I can speak for every single professor.
I
We
appreciate
just, yeah, we just valued so much of what you brought to this program. And we still have your back, man. So,
Ah,
right, but
I'll
whatever
be at
you need, just let us know. And when you are back in Wisconsin, I'd love to have you actually speak to the students in person.
100%. I know when I was in Wisconsin, I was working at Guitar Center very briefly while I was playing in this metal band. And so I have a lot of friends, and I got a wedding invite up in Appleton in October, and I'm going to do everything I can to get there. I told my buddy Alex I will be there. So, um, and my girlfriend being growing up in Florida, she's never really been to Wisconsin, so this is going to be a total culture shock for her.
Excellent. All right. Well, Michael, thank you so much for doing this. I'll let you go and we'll talk to you again soon.